Welcome to the second episode of the Sports Section, a podcast brought to you by the Rider News. My name is Carolo Pascale, alongside with Shaun, Chornobroff, and Dylan Manfre. And the first topics we're going to get into today is some of the testing that the NCAA has done for the players. And Dylan, you had some stuff that you wanted to mention about it.
Yeah, the NCAA came out with its ruling on, or its testing guidance for the college basketball players of the winter season. They're going to be required to get tested 3 days a week. I believe one time a week during the preseason period, which will last from October 14th, I believe, until November 24th, the day before the season starts. So during the season, they're going to be tested 3 days a week using the rapid tests, not your traditional PCR test. You know, we all know the Q-tip getting shoved up the nose and, the spit into the test tube. That's the traditional PCR test. So that's what the NCAA is going to require. The rapid testing is less accurate, but it produces fast results, as we all know. However, something that the NCAA outlined is that if a player is to test positive using one of the rapid tests, because it is less accurate, that increases the likelihood of a false positive. So then the NCAA will require the school to deliver a traditional or confirmatory PCR test to determine whether that person is infected with COVID-19 or not.
I know for at least the quick test, there's something like 15 minutes or something like that, and there's been a lot of false positives that I know that have been going around recently. In sports, there's been a lot of false positives, but either way, I think that it's good that the NCAA finally announced this, the testing protocols that they're going to have going forward, because we're not that far away now from the basketball season, and they're going to have to test a lot of players very quickly.
Yes, and riders absorbing those tests. They're getting those rapid tests. I think my interview with university spokesperson Debbie Stasola, she said that the university is going to have to purchase another 2,800 tests. They already had 2,100 rapid tests on file, on hand. But let's talk about the university as a whole for a second here. Stephen Newcomb, our executive editor, put something out that the Rider University has tested 8 people on campus.
Total,
8?
yeah.
8 total people?
That's
pretty damn disturbing, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's a bit disturbing and very ridiculous. Like, for them to have, almost 900 or just over 900 kids on campus, and for them to only test 8 kids, that's insane. That's ridiculous, when other schools have tested way more.
It's not even like, we're not even saying that from, like, an objective standpoint. Like obviously you try to be unbiased as a journalist here, but this is public health. You can't just test 8 out of 900 students. Yeah,
they should be doing random testing of kids, like, I don't know, once every 2. Well, they would get like a group of maybe 50 kids or something like that together and test them at a time, a couple kids per week. You don't have to get tested every week, obviously, but like they should at least be testing way more.
It begs the question, because now, like, now these athletes are going to be getting tested 3 times a week, and they're going to be fully asymptomatic. We haven't heard of an active case on any of Rider's athletic teams yet. So it begs the question, like, why are they able to get a test and other residential students are not?
Yeah, that's definitely a big issue, and I think the school needs to try and at least do somewhat of a better job. They recently released that they're going to be giving out more info on Tuesdays about all the testing they're doing, which the Rider News has been trying to get that info, and they've been somewhat reluctant to give it out, which I can understand. They don't want to give out private info, obviously, but you should at least give some number of how many you've tested, and 8 is just an abysmal number. Shaun, do you have anything to add about it?
No, 8 is a little low, but I think it all comes down to the system. And again, like, when you consider the system we use, to be honest, it's on a Campus Clear thing. We use the Campus Clear app. You report symptoms, you get tested. We have a large commuter population. We don't have too many people on campus. All this stuff kind of affects that number. And yes, we do have a large amount of people on campus. But we have to remember how fluid the testing situation has been. We have had influxes and then shortage of tests in such rapid succession of each other that I think that needs to be somewhat taken into account. Yes, I think low 8 is a little bit too low of a number, but I think kind of we're seeing that number and we're just jumping to this reaction instead of putting this whole situation into context to where I'm sitting here, I'm saying, okay, students have to report symptoms every day to go get food from Krantz or Dailies. That's like basically a requirement at this point. To do the basic necessities of a student, you have to report your symptoms. Now, that's just on the student to actually do their job and really report their symptoms, and on the students to be safe, which that is a bigger issue in my opinion. A bigger issue than the testing has been students' behavior and student protocol. That's the thing that actually needs to be figured out, and that's what's going to put sports in jeopardy before anything else.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point, as I know at least a few people that I know haven't done anything with the Campus Clear app. I'm not going to name names, obviously, but they just either didn't have it or they just weren't doing it, reporting their symptoms if they had any, or just saying they didn't have any in general. And I think that's a big issue with the student population, and like you said, that could potentially get sports canceled.
No, it potentially could, and it potentially will. We have seen instances already. We've heard of instances. There's nothing we really have too confirmed, but we don't know if these are athletes or not, but there was an instance of 20 students diving into the lake that Steven put on his Twitter. Whether they're athletes or not is irrelevant because they are still student population who may have contact with athletes. They are probably dorming with athletes. I cannot get on campus and not see a group of track kids at Dailies because that's such a big team and they are all on campus pretty much. So I don't care if you're an athlete or not. We just need to be doing the responsible thing, not only because of sports, just because we're people. We need to be keeping ourselves in check and making sure we're keeping the people around us healthy.
Yeah, that's the number one thing right there, is just to make sure that we stay healthy and everyone else stays healthy, and we have to take into account everybody else, not just ourselves. But moving on back towards some sports and not just talking about all the COVID protocols, is Dylan had worked on a really, really big story for the 2000 Rider field hockey team. So why don't we go over that a little bit?
So that's probably one of the most impactful stories I've worked on in a very, very, very long time. It's so interesting to hear everybody reminisce about that season. You know, Riders snuck into the playoffs as the 4 seed. There's only 4. Let's just make something clear. There's only 4 seeds, or only 4 teams make the NEC field hockey playoffs. So Rider is the bottom final seed. They snuck in because they had allowed the fewest goals in conference play, and it's really interesting to see and hear everybody talk so candidly about that season. Spoke with Erica talk yesterday, and she said that she broke the referee's rib cage on accident, as they were going for a ball. Christine Cabarly, who pretty much everybody said was the unanimous leader of the team in 2000. Christine described to me their first practice of 2000 as she wouldn't even constitute it as a practice. She said she wouldn't constitute it as a run for some people, just taking a little jab at her teammates, saying that maybe they weren't in the best shape, but it's definitely fun to see and hear everybody talk so candidly about each other, about that team, about the Who songs, who, by the way, were in their first year at Rider in 2000. And yeah, it was definitely interesting to talk to them.
I know this story is really, really long. Excuse me, but I know it's a really, really long story, and you got so many quotes, and you talked to so many of the players and the coaches, and it's just a fantastic story, and it's a really big one, and I encourage everyone to go read it because it's very, very good, and there's going to be a lot of pictures with it, throughout that came throughout that season, and it was basically a miracle run, like Dylan had said, for them to win their first championship, and it was just it's a fantastic story.
Something else I thought was really interesting. they talked really candidly about the banquet as well at the end of the season. You know, like people get banquets at the end of the season and whatnot. You know, Lori Husong and Dan Husong, they still have that 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 red box filled with thank you notes that all the seniors wrote to them at the end of the season. You know, it's a red box and there's a team photo with them holding the NEC trophy on top of it. I think it says RUFH in like gold or something. But yeah, it's cool to see that they all still have that.
Yeah, that's definitely a good piece of history and something definitely to keep forever for them. And it's just a fantastic story for both the team and the story you wrote. But moving on now to another story that we had over the past week was Shaun's story about McKeithen on the basketball team. So Shaun, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I wrote this one. I believe it was published now 2 weeks ago from when this will come out. And this kid, I'll be honest, that kid is going to be something different as soon as he sets on the floor. He's going to have to redshirt this year. He tore his ACL. He's going through recovery. But I talked to him, a former opponent from high school, his high school coach, Coach Baggett, nothing but things about how amazing he is. His high school coach said he's one of the 5 best players to ever go to that high school. He comes from a basketball family. And most importantly, my two favorite traits when I look at athletes, when I really make my opinion on their skills, sit on them as a player, it's their leadership abilities and the chip they play with. You name me a great athlete, I guarantee you he played with a chip on his shoulder. I watched film of this kid from high school, and one of my best friends is from Connecticut, played him in high school, told me the second he committed to Rider that, like, this is a kid I need to go see. I went and found the film. He plays with a chip. When the game is on the line, he's the type of guy who wants the ball in his hands. And Coach Baggett has said, despite not being able to practice, he's already a leader on a Rider team that's rebuilding. He's going to now be at the school for 5 years, and Baggett believes he's going to be one of the best point guards to have ever played at the school when his time is all said and done.
Shaun, let me ask you something. Do you think him and Christian Ace will start alongside each other once Corey McKeithen's going to be able to play on the floor?
So the plan originally for McKeithen this year, Baggett said, was for him to play behind and eventually alongside him. And now I think McKeithen has said to me he's expected to come back bigger, faster, and stronger. And Baggett even compared this to when Demencio Vaughn, who is now at Ole Miss, was an all-MAAC selection for Rider, superstar of the team last year. When he tore his ACL his freshman year, it allowed him to step back and see things from not on the floor, but off the floor, really evaluate the competition he's seeing and grow into a Division I high-end level athlete. Now McKeithen has that same opportunity. He's got the leadership traits. I know I could tell you, Baggett could tell you, and McKeithen knows himself he's got the ability, so he will definitely be starting alongside Christian Ings, and he will be a starter in some type of role as soon as he's healthy. Come 2021-22 season, yet almost messed up my math there, the years. 2021-22 season, Corey McKeithen will be in the starting 5 for the Rider Bronx. I feel pretty sure saying that.
That's some very high praise for a kid who's coming in as a freshman. That's incredible praise, and for him to play along Ings that's gonna be a really good tandem going forward for Rider. And like you said, Shaun, they are rebuilding in a sense, and he's just going to be a fantastic piece to the rebuild for Rider. And for the praise from Coach Baggett, that's got to be huge for him.
No, it really is. Like you don't really hear. Coach Baggett's a very honest guy. Me, Dylan, we can both attest that. He's very upfront. He's very honest. I said I was writing an article about him, and literally I asked him one question, goes on for 3 or 4 minutes how great of a kid he is. Second question, 3 or 4 minutes on how great of a kid he is. I asked 3 questions during the whole interview. He gave me more than what I expected from the 6 or 7 questions I had listed, because he was just so willing to talk about how great of a player this kid is going to be. And even his high school coach said he remembers preseason of his freshman year, the kid missed a game winner, McKeithen, a younger Corey McKeithen. Spent the next 4 years getting a reputation in his conference as someone who makes game winners, and he made one. One of the, if you look him up, the first highlight you'll see is him. There was a team in Connecticut called East Catholic. They were the #1 team in the state. They had a 69-game home winning streak. Corey McKeithen went in there, hit a game winner with 13 seconds left, a circus layup, sunk that winning streak almost single-handedly. He won't say that himself because he's just that kind of humble kind of guy. but that kid is something special. He plays with the type of chip that you really want to see in an athlete and a point guard. Baggett said his point guards are almost an extension of himself, like a coach on the floor, almost like a quarterback. And he really already sees Corey McKeithen embodying that ideal that he really holds valuable in his lead guards.
That's huge praise coming from him. And that's...
I'm really eager to see him play.
Yeah. From everything you've said, Shaun, and everything I read in the story, he sounds like he's going to be fantastic, and I really want to see him play this year. I mean, if we can get to games at this point with fans, if at all, but I really want to see him play from everything you've said so far and what Coach Baggett has said.
I'm looking forward to it myself.
Carol, you also did a story about the hockey team who might have a chance to come back in hopefully January. If you want to, why don't you share a little bit about what you spoke with some of the other players.
Yeah, so the hockey team, they are a club team, first of all. The Rider Ice Hockey team is a club team. So they are basically like designated to whatever the clubs are supposed to do. And right now, every club sport is canceled. Well, not canceled, postponed, and they won't have a fall season. But since ice hockey is technically a winter sport, they could still have one. And right now, the plan is that they're going to start playing in January, from everything they've gathered, and they're trying to open up some conversations with the school because the ACHA, the league that they play in, basically said that they're going to leave it up to the colleges to decide whether they're going to allow them to play or not if they're a club team or if they're just a regular like D2, D3, D1 team. But since Rider Ice Hockey's a club team, it's going to be up to Rider to decide whether they're going to actually let them play. And I talked to a few of the players. Mike Klein, one of them, he's a senior this year. He had like a few really, really good quotes about how he was very frustrated that they just can't get back to playing or back to practicing even because some of the other sports have been practicing now. Coach Shaun Levin mentioned the soccer teams practicing, and he knows that there's going to be restrictions on everything, but he wants to get practicing again with the team and eventually get to games. But like for all sports, he acknowledges and the players acknowledge that, of course, health and school comes first. So they really want to have a season, but right now it's on hold. They're just waiting to see once Rider decides on what they want to do for club sports in the winter and when they can go forward.
In your own opinion, do you think they'll be able to practice in the 2020 calendar year?
I think they will. From everything I've been told, they're probably going to be hearing something within the next few weeks from Rider to hopefully get practicing again. I'm not sure when they would start games. They probably wouldn't start games until somewhere into January after the first semester's over, but it sounds like they may be getting some better news in the coming weeks about practices, maybe being able to do a few small groups, like 5-6 players at a time, maybe up to 10, even at the highest, like a couple, like 1 or 2 goalies and a bunch of players. But right now they're just really waiting on that, and I think they will play. It's just a matter of when at this point.
Mm-hmm. It'd be exciting to see. It'd be exciting to see any sporting event happen, at the collegiate level. We're gonna have basketball, as of November 25th. Full team practices as of October 14th, hopefully. It's all part of the team's resocialization plan, and this is gonna be one interesting spring, boys. Let me tell you.
It's gonna be a very, very hectic spring for me, at least. But either way, that's going to do it here for the second episode of the sports section. My name's Carolo Pascale alongside Shaun Chornobroff and Dylan Manfre.